So I'm not saying more for like us to build new characters, but more of just like kind of discuss, you know, what do you do? Or maybe we could even
in general, like
well,
an
try
overview of
making
character
like,
building.
you know, how would we make Guts? How would you make Cloud? How would you make Squall? How could you make I don't know, who would be somebody fun to make in anime?
In anime,
Or a video game character even.
I
Full
mean,
Metal
I could,
Alchemist.
yeah, Full Metal Alchemist theoretically. Vincent from 7.
Vincent, that would I actually would
That's-
love to talk about Vincent. Something fun. So how would we go about making Vincent from Final Fantasy VII? Because he has, what does he have capable?
Well, in 5th edition, that one you'd have to make a couple of sacrifices, technically, like his limit break.
So transforming into like a,
Yeah, I don't reasonably see being able to do that without, like, yeah,
Slave Rain.
well, even then,
Druid.
like, yeah, you'd have to use Druid, but,
for like
well-
lycanthropy or something.
actually, you could theoretically use some sort of spell. I believe there would be some type of polymorph that you would have access to, but I don't believe you'd have access to that until deep into a spellcasting class.
Which is fine.
Right? Are you wanting to actually be able to do stuff in combat with your gun? Obviously, I would imagine so. He attacks slow, so I imagine, unless you were trying to pass off his multiple attacks as Cerberus's tri-barrel.
He
the
turns into a
hammer.
werewolf, right?
He turns into, well, he turns into a couple of things. He turns into like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy. He turns into a demon, if I recall. There
See,
was
I do remember the demon.
I think he
um,
turns into like a Frankenstein.
Yeah, I believe there's Frankenstein and there was something else. Like he has 4 limits, of course, but
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. I just most vividly remember Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy and being like, "What?"
I never
actually
used
did
Vincent in
not
my
like
party.
using him in battle because I didn't like not being able to control the character.
I didn't end up using his limit break, really. That was basically it.
I remember his best weapon. It was it gets stronger the more enemies you kill.
The more enemies you kill.
Once you
Yep,
kill
that
enough,
thing.
like his minimum damage is max damage.
Yep.
Which
you,
is-
you just pow. Something is hurting. Yep.
Okay, so let's say we're trying to do this. Human is always my go-to thought with that, but just off what we have in 5th ed, is there something else we could use that allows for like a transformation?
Well, I mean, theoretically, we'd have to dive in. We'd probably want to dive top to bottom. What we can technically do here, also, if the GM was particularly rigid, would be to even create this with a crossbow and just skin it as a gun. Because I know those exist as well, and they would work realistically just the same. So
That actually makes sense to me.
yeah, if the DM was like, "No, guns don't exist," blah blah blah, you could do this with a crossbow.
Would that be
character.
like a ranger?
Literally, no, I mean you can do it as a ranger. Ironically, here in this case, we could explore
I'm gonna check
each of them and see if one doesn't fit. I see him more shadowy, roguey like, right?
Let's say we want to incorporate his lycanthropy or his his transformation. So we have 4 levels of rogue. That gets us, we have our feet, firearm specialist. He is nimble. We'd put a lot of points into dex. What would be the next class if we were trying to do it in 5th ed? Like, it would have to be druid, right? If we were trying, let's just say again, transform into anything.
Let's see. I mean, we would have to technically explore most of the other spells as well, because while Druid would work theoretically, it has some pretty specific limitations, and you couldn't reach any of the things that you'd want to change into with Vincent with only a few levels of Druid.
I figured not.
Yeah, like you could turn into half CR, so technically you could turn into like, I don't know, a wolf maybe, with a couple level of Druid, but unless you took Druid of the Moon, then you could turn into a bear. But it doesn't get much more robust than that for a while. And it also limits based on, I believe it's natural animals that you have seen. Yes. I wouldn't consider the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy as a natural animal.
Again, that's where I'm going more for like the werewolf kind of aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, and even then, table. I don't think, B shape would be the next best thing. And I believe that probably would require at least like
it's 2 levels.
2 levels. Well, really, like
wild shape. Starting at 2nd level, you can use your action to magically assume the shape of a beast that you've seen before. You can use this feature twice. You regain expended uses when you finish a short or long rest.
Yeah, so that is a beast. That is, that's what I was talking about. It is a beast, which is a specific monster type, which is something that you have to be cognizant of, because there are magic beasts, aberrations, undead. Each one is a specific type. And a werewolf, sorry about that, a werewolf would at best be a monstrous humanoid or a magical beast, right? So he would permanently fall out of the purview of what a druid can technically turn into.
Which I can understand. So I think this is one of those like, okay, we're gonna have to kind of draw a line somewhere with what fit that allows us, and that's where I think wolf is like an acceptable, like middle ground, if you would. At a minimum, to make Vincent, we could do it in theoretically 6 levels. 4 levels of rogue. In the skirmisher, use stealth, get the firearm specialty feat. 2 levels in druid with Circle of the Moon druid. That way you could turn into a wolf.
Or even a bear, technically, at that point. And theoretically, if we're reskinning things, the CR1 brown bear is strong enough to, bulky enough, I guess you could say, to quantify being like, this is actually a werewolf. It has the same attacks, claws and bites. It has quite a bit more hit points, so you could even still feasibly reskin. You wouldn't be statted as a werewolf in D&D, which does probably exist, or does exist. But at least this way, you'd be able to skirt that line a little bit. So, yeah, totally. And if you were variant human, you'd have both of those feats, and from there, it's all cake.
Cool.
Like you could go into fighter at that point. You could, you could do whatever the hell you wanted, basically.
I kind of like that, actually. That'd just be trying to class into stuff that makes your gun stronger, right?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you either do ranger or not ranger, rogue or fighter, simply because fighter is disgusting. It gets the ability to do an action surge, which lets you attack a whole bunch of times, and then you start looking at a scenario where if you have advantage on attacks, or you're in a scenario where you have advantage, you can attack like 4, 6, 8 times, something like that.
Which also kind of lines up with Vincent.
Exactly. Yeah,
pop,
tons
pop,
of bullets.
Move again. Pop, 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 pop. Move again.
Yeah, and you would be able to have, I don't know how high your accuracy would be at that point, but you imagine you have that sharpshooter on all those attacks. If you get 40, 3 of those attacks to hit, you're doing, again, upward of 60 to 90 points of damage easy. So
Vincent's kind of broken.
Yeah, I mean, and this is an example, right? You take a look at some of this stuff, and a character at its base, like most of our characters in our D&D game don't approach something like this. But as soon as you do just a couple of like, oh hey, 1 + 1 = 2,
Some little fine tweaks.
yeah, and it's like Pathfinder is very similar to this scenario, but you can do this optimizing, we'll call it, for pretty much every character in Pathfinder. Almost every character is viable to be absolutely bat-crap and insane. In 5th, I don't see it too much. Like, some characters just don't have the option to do 90+ points of damage. I mean, you probably do, but again, most of the avenues are going to be in roughly the same boat. Like, you could do this with a bard, for example, but it really relies on, does the DM say yes, feats exist, and you use a single core feat to be able to amplify the amount of damage you can do. So unless everybody's doing this, the one person who shows up with this is like, whoop, I just broke the game, we're not playing rocket tag. So it's this is definitely 5th in a nutshell. It's really awesome for being open and easy to do, but unfortunately some areas it's really easy to break too.